She woke up one morning and realized something powerful. She was done living the same day over and over again.
Oh.
She was done chasing approval, done bending her spirit to fit into a life that no longer reflected her truth. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She simply let go. And when she did, everything began to change. She didn't fall apart. She rose. She didn't crumble. She glowed up. Why? Because the moment she surrendered the past, the moment she released the emotions that kept her stuck in an old personality, she unlocked a new future, a quantum shift. And this is the moment her real transformation began. Letting go is not about giving up. It's not about weakness or surrendering to defeat. Letting go is a conscious act of liberation. It is the moment when a person chooses to free themselves from the energy of the past, when they decide that their future matters more than their memory. It's subtle, quiet, often unnoticed by others. But within, it's a revolution. She realized that every time she replayed that old argument, every time she ruminated over the betrayal, the disappointment, the rejection, she was keeping her body chemically tethered to a timeline that no longer existed. The mind may have wanted change, but the body was addicted to the emotions of the past. The truth is, our bodies don't know the difference between an actual experience and a memory of that experience. So, when she relived that pain, she was flooding her system with the same neurochemistry. Cortisol, adrenaline, survival mode. The body got addicted to it. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. That's the trap. And so, she woke up in the morning with the same thoughts, which triggered the same emotions, which drove the same behaviors, which created the same results. That is the loop. That is how people live in the past while thinking they want a new future. But she became aware, and that awareness was the beginning of her transformation. She caught herself mid-thought. She paused before reacting. She began to observe her emotions instead of being ruled by them. And in doing so, she started to dismantle the old personality, the one built from pain, built from protection. She made a new decision, to no longer rehearse lack, to no longer perform suffering for the world, to stop telling stories that kept her small. She realized she didn't have to hold on to anything to prove she had been hurt. She could let it go, and still be whole. That moment when she chose release over resentment, that was not weakness, that was quantum strength. Because now, she was no longer using her energy to survive, she was using it to create. Her body, no longer in defense, started healing. Her thoughts, no longer clouded by fear, became clear. Her heart, no longer armored, began to open. The frequency of her being shifted. In the moment her energy shifted, her life began to follow.
Oh.
This is the science of transformation. When she let go of the emotion, she let go of the story. When she let go of the story, she let go of the identity. And when she let go of the identity, she made space for the unknown. She began to trust that something greater than her memory could guide her future. And in that surrender, in that beautiful space of uncertainty, she finally found freedom. She used to believe that who she was had been written in stone, that her personality was a fixed construct built from her past, her pain, her patterns. She thought her story defined her, the wounds she carried, the memories she clung to, the survival mechanisms she mastered. But deep down, something within her kept whispering, "You are more than this." And that whisper grew louder as she began to question the narrative she had rehearsed for years. What if who she had become was simply the product of repeated thoughts, repeated behaviors, and repeated emotional experiences? What if her identity wasn't who she truly was, but who she had been conditioned to be? That question opened a door. Because once you understand that the personality creates the personal reality, start to see the connection between who you are being and the life you are experiencing. If her life was reflecting stress, conflict, emotional pain, then perhaps, she reasoned, it was because her inner world was broadcasting those exact frequencies. And if that was true, then change didn't require the world to shift. It required her to shift. She stopped asking, "When will my life change?" and started asking, "Who do I need to become to create a different life?" That shifting question was powerful. It was the catalyst that took her out of victimhood and placed her into conscious creation. Because the future version of Hertha, one who walked in peace, who lived in self-respect, who radiated love, that woman already existed in the quantum field. But to meet her, she had to stop being the old self. She became deeply intentional. She no longer woke up and reached for her phone, diving into the same cycle of unconscious thought. Instead, she sat in stillness. She closed her eyes and turned inward. She asked, if I were already Hertha future me, how would I think? How would I feel? How would I walk through this day? She practiced becoming that version of herself, not just once, but every single day. She rehearsed her new self until her mind began to accept it as truth. The brain doesn't know the difference between what is vividly imagined and what is real. So every time she visualized herself confident, grounded, joyful, she was installing new neurological hardware. With repetition, that hardware became a software program. New thoughts led to new choices. New choices led to new behaviors. New behaviors created new experiences. And those new experiences began to signal new emotions that matched her desired future. She felt joy before it happened. She felt freedom before the conditions changed. She embodied abundance while the bank account still said otherwise. This wasn't about pretending. It wasn't delusion. It was deep, intentional embodiment. She was teaching her body how the future would feel before it arrived. And as her body accepted that elevated emotion as familiar, it began to believe the future was already happening. That belief sent a signal to the quantum field, and the field responded. Not because she was chasing or forcing, but because she was aligning. She also became erratically aware of when she was slipping back into her old self. The moment doubt crept in, she noticed it. The moment she felt the urge to complain, to react, to sabotage, she paused. Because now she knew those were the fingerprints of the past. And if she was serious about creating a new future, she couldn't enter it carrying the baggage of the old. Every time she chose awareness over habit, she was breaking the neural circuitry that kept her tethered to her history. Every time she caught herself and chose differently, she was wiring a new identity into existence. And it wasn't easy. The old self doesn't go quietly. The body throws tantrums. The emotions feel like truth. But she had seen too much, felt too much to go back. She began to love the process, the becoming. Not because it was fast, but because it was real. She realized the globe wasn't the result of one massive event. It was the daily, deliberate decision to become conscious, to no longer live on autopilot, but to design her mind, condition her body, and elevate her spirit. She wasn't faking it until she made it. She was being it until she became it. That distinction changed everything. She started to understand that her thoughts were no longer looping in the past. They were anchored in vision, and her emotions weren't rooted in old pain. They were resonating with her future potential. She wasn't reacting to life anymore. She was initiating it. She was no longer defined by her old story. She was writing a new one, page by page, breath by breath. And every day she showed up to that inner work, she came one step closer to her future self. Not because she was chasing some distant dream, but because she had already become the woman who was living it. There was a moment quiet and profound when she realized she had been feeling her past more than her future. Every emotion she carried was a signal, and most of those signals were rooted in memories. She was emotionally anchored to moments that no longer existed except in her biology. She had been waking up and subconsciously rehearsing the pain, the regret, the fear, not on purpose, but by habit. Her body had memorized those emotions, and because emotions are chemical records of past experiences, her body had become the mind of her past. But the future she longed for peace, freedom, love couldn't exist in the frequency of her old emotions. That's when the insight landed with clarity. Emotions are not just reactions. They are creators. They are the GPS of her destiny. And if she wanted to arrive somewhere new, she had to start feeling something new. It's not after things change, but before. She began each morning by closing her eyes, placing her hands on her heart, and asking herself, what do I want to feel today? Not what does the world expect of me? Not what do I fear will happen, but what am I ready to become emotionally familiar with? She knew that if she could teach her body how the future felt before it arrived, then she would begin to attract it not from force, but from resonance. Gratitude became her anchor, not the kind of gratitude that comes after receiving, but the kind that precedes it. She gave thanks for healing before the diagnosis changed. She felt love before the relationship came. She embraced abundance before the opportunity showed up. And at first her body resisted. It wanted proof before belief. But she kept returning to that elevated state over and over again, until her inner environment became more real than the outer world. This was not imagination, it was transformation. Because the body, once conditioned into a new emotional signature, no longer searches for the familiar chemicals of the past. It begins to crave the new. She was no longer addicted to survival. She was becoming fluent in creation. She didn't need something outside of her to feel alive anymore. She didn't wait for life to hand her the perfect moment. She created it from within. As she sustained those elevated emotions, something began to shift. Her thoughts aligned with her emotions. Her energy field became coherent. The incoherence of fear and doubt began to dissolve. She was no longer thinking one thing and feeling another. She was congruent, integrated, and the universe responds to coherence. When thought and emotion are aligned, when intention and energy are synchronized, we become magnetic. And that's exactly what began to happen. People around her noticed. They couldn't explain it, but they felt it. Something about her presence had changed. She no longer entered rooms trying to be seen. She radiated from within. That's the power of emotional alignment. It's not about saying the right things or doing the right things. It's about being the right frequency. But this didn't make her immune to challenge. She still had moments where the old emotions tried to pull her back. But now she had a choice. She had awareness. She could feel the difference between emotional memory and emotional creation. She could recognize when she was slipping into the emotional patterns of the past and consciously redirect herself into the feelings of the future. She had learned how to become the master of her emotions, not by suppressing them, but by observing, learning, and choosing something higher. This was the real glow, not a change in circumstances, but a change in state. She realized that if she waited for something outside of her to make her feel whole, she would be waiting forever. But if she could cultivate wholeness now, in this moment, then the external would have no choice but to reflect that internal state. That's how creation works, from the inside out. She became deeply aware that every emotional state is a frequency, and frequency carries information. Fear carries a signal. So does love. So does empowerment. In the field, this invisible, intelligent energy that surrounds us is always responding to the signal we broadcast. So she made a vow to herself, to be intentional with the emotions she rehearsed, to no longer let the past write the script of her future, to feel in every fiber of her being the elevated state of the life she was calling in. Because when she mastered her emotions, she mastered her energy. And when she mastered her energy, she became the creator of her reality. Not by chance, not by luck, but by design, by conscious evolution, by waking up every day and becoming emotionally connected to her future until it became inevitable. It wasn't just that she changed her habits. It wasn't just a new routine, a new job, a new look. What happened was deeper cellular, energetic, quantum. Because real transformation doesn't begin on the surface, it begins in the invisible. It starts with a decision to no longer be who you were, to stop rehearsing the emotions that keep you tied to the same outcomes. And when she let go of the old energy of guilt, of fear, of the heavy weight of who she thought she was supposed to be, something profound took its place. She didn't just shift her mindset, she shifted her frequency. People around her began to notice something before she said a word. They felt it. Her presence had changed. Her eyes carried a different light, walked differently, not with arrogance, but with alignment. It was as if she had unplugged from the noise of the world and tuned into a much deeper rhythm. And that's exactly what happened. Because when you elevate your energy, you don't just feel better, you become magnetic. You don't chase anything. You draw it to you through coherence. You live in a universe that speaks the language of energy, not effort. And energy doesn't lie, it can put on a mask. You can say all the right words, but your energy always reveals what you truly believe. And for years, her energy was wired to survival, fear of failure, the need to prove, to perform, to be accepted. It was all running beneath the surface, shaping the outcomes of her life, keeping her on repeat. But the moment she became aware of it, she had the power to change it, and she did. She began each morning not with her to-do list, but with her to-be list. Who am I willing to be today, Even if nothing in the external world changes, can I feel joy now? Can I generate gratitude without needing a reason? Can I open my heart even when it's easier to shut down? Those became her morning rituals, not from obligation, but from devotion. Because she understood, your energy introduces you before you do. And if you want a new life, you must become a new energy. And so, the glow began. Not in front of the mirror, but in meditation, in silence, in deep emotional alchemy. She closed her eyes, not to escape life, but to design it. She stopped waiting for something outside of her to validate her worth, and started feeling worthy. She stopped needing circumstances to shift, and began shifting her inner world until her environment had no choice but to mirror it.
Ow.
The people who used to drain her began to drift away. Not because she pushed them out, but because their frequency no longer matched hers. The situations that once triggered her now felt neutral. The things she used to chase, love, recognition, peace, now flowed to her with ease. Because she wasn't trying to get any more. She was embodying, radiating. That's what happens when you live in elevated emotion long enough. It becomes your baseline. Your nervous system recalibrates to peace. Your immune system becomes stronger. Your mind becomes clearer. Your intuition sharpens. And the field of quantum intelligence that governs all of life begins to organize around your new signature. You're no longer asking life to give you what you want. You're becoming it, and life simply responds. She began to understand that the real glow was spiritual, was a remembrance, a return to the truth that she was never broken, never lacking, never behind. That her power was never in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself, and how she chose to feel, think, and be, even when no one else was watching. She became the source of her own validation, the generator of her own emotional state, and in doing so, she broke the cycle that had ruled generations before her. Because when a woman chooses to glow from within, she heals more than just herself. She becomes a signal to others. A living example that peace is possible, that self-love is not a luxury but a necessity, that wholeness isn't something you find, it's something you return to. And so she didn't glow up by chance. She glowed up because she remembered who she was before the world told her who to be. She glowed up because she traded performance for presence. She glowed up because she understood that beauty, power, transformation don't begin outside. They are born in the invisible, in the energetic, in the quantum. She changed her life not by controlling it, but by aligning with it one coherent breath, one elevated emotion, one intentional thought at a time. So here's the truth. Your glow isn't in the mirror, it's in your mind. It's in your willingness to let go of the old self and rise into the version of you who already exists in the quantum field. She didn't wait for the world to change. She changed her energy, and the world responded, and you can do the same. The power is not outside you, it's inside you. It always has been. If this message awakens something in you, share it, comment below. I am ready to let go and glow up. Let's rise together.